I want you to try a little thought experiment with me to kick things off.
Okay, I'm with you.
Picture a standard kitchen sponge. You know, the kind yellow on one side, maybe that scratchy green abrasive layer on the other?
Yep, got it. Sitting by the sink.
It's sitting next to your sink. It's dry. It's stiff. It's probably the most boring object in your entire house.
It's certainly not something you'd usually associate with, high-stakes medical drama. It's a tool for wiping up crumbs.
Exactly. It's mundane. It's completely functional. But the source material we are diving into today takes that harmless, porous little brick and turns it into a metaphor for something that is actually quite terrifying.
It really does.
Because if you take the physics of a wet sponge and apply them to the delicate neural tissue inside your eye, you don't get a clean counter. You get a distorted reality.
It really reframes the object, doesn't it? I mean, we usually think of a sponge as something that cleans up a mess, something that absorbs.
It solves a problem.
But in the context of the retina, a sponge is something that swells. And that swelling, that physical change in volume, changes the geometry of how we see the world.
That is the core mission for this deep dive. We are looking at a text called The Wet Sponge, Navigating Diabetic Macular Edema, and we are zooming in specifically on episode 4 of that series.
A really fascinating piece of writing.
It is, and we want to understand how a microscopic amount of fluid, I mean, we are talking about drops so small you wouldn't even feel them on your skin, how that can physically buckle the screen inside your eye and turn straight lines into waves.
And what I appreciate about this specific deep dive and this source is that it moves us away from the chemical abstract.
Right.
We're not just talking about A1C levels or insulin resistance in some vague sense. It gets us into the mechanical reality.
The physics of it.
The physics of it. This is a story about plumbing, about structural engineering, and about optics. It's about what happens when the very machinery of sight loses its structural integrity.
Right. It's not just my eyes are bad, it's my eyes are physically warped.
Right.
And to get us there, to really help us understand this, the source material introduces us to a specific character.
Good persona, yeah.
Her name is Maria.
And Maria is our guide through this funhouse mirror.
Now, the text is very, very specific about Maria's background. It doesn't just say she's a patient. It tells us she's an accountant.
Hmm.
And I get the sense, reading this, that this isn't just a throwaway detail. It feels important.
Oh, absolutely not. It's the whole setup. Think about the visual environment of an accountant. What does their world look like? What does it feel like?
It's a grids. It's all grids. It's Excel sheets. It's rows, columns, decimal points. It's black ink on white paper. It's order.
Precisely. It is a world that is defined by rigidity, by straight lines. In accounting, there is no ambiguity. A number is in a cell or it isn't. A line is straight or it isn't.
The source material actually has this great line. It notes that the rows and columns comfort her.
Comfort her. I love that. It implies that for Maria, visual structure is more than just her job. It's a psychological safety net.
Right.
She craves order. She likes things to be linear and predictable. So when you introduce a visual distortion into that specific life, into that specific mindset, it's not just an annoyance.
Yeah.
It's a violation of her entire worldview.
It attacks the very thing she relies on to make sense of the world. And that brings us right to the onset of the symptoms. The text describes it in a way that, honestly, it gave me the chills.
That's very healthy.
She's looking at her spreadsheet, her safe space, her comfort zone, and it says, lately, the grid lines in the center of her screen look wavy.
Wavy. It's such a deceptively simple word, but if you just pause and really think about the cognitive dissonance of that experience.
I mean, she knows the screen is a solid piece of glass. She knows the pixels are fixed in place.
Right. The computer monitor isn't melting. The paper ledger isn't wet. But her brain, the final interpreter, is receiving a signal that says this perfectly straight line is rippling.
It must create this incredible conflict between what she knows to be true, physics, and what she is perceiving, biology.
Exactly. And the source material uses a very specific image to help us visualize this. It calls it a heat mirage.
That is the perfect analogy for this specific type of distortion. It's not a blur. It's a shimmer.
It's a shimmer. It's an instability.
Let's unpack that, because I think we've all seen it, but maybe we haven't analyzed it. So you're on a road trip. It's the middle of July. You're driving through, say, Arizona. You look down the highway. What do you see?
You see the asphalt and you see the yellow painted lines, But just above the surface, the air is turbulent. It's dancing.
Yeah, that little watery effect.
And because that hot air has a different density than the cool air above it, it bends the light passing through it.
Through refraction, right. Basic physics.
Exactly. So even though the road is made of concrete and is perfectly still, and the yellow line is painted and is perfectly straight,
You know it's straight.
your eye perceives it as shimmering. It looks like water. It looks like it's moving. It looks alive.
It's a mirage. Not because it's a hallucination, not because you're seeing something that isn't there.
Correct.
But because the path the light takes is being bent before it hits your eye. The information is being corrupted in transit.
Right. Now take that exact sensation, that shimmering, unstable, watery view of reality, and transport it from a highway in Arizona to a climate-controlled accounting office.
Oh, wow.
Maria is looking at a static spreadsheet, and the numbers are doing the heat dance.
That is genuinely terrifying.
Yeah.
On the road, you can explain it away. You say, oh, it's hot out. It's an external phenomenon. You understand the science.
Here's a rational explanation that lives outside of you.
But sitting in a 70-degree office.
There is no heat. There is no atmospheric turbulence. The only place that turbulence can be happening is inside her own head.
Or her eye, specifically.
Or her eye. The problem is internal.
Which leads to the next beat in this narrative, which I found so relatable. The source calls it the failed fix. What is the first thing you do when you see a smudge or a blur or some kind of visual artifact?
You blame the equipment. You assume the error is external to you.
100%. The text says she wipes her glasses.
It's a reflex. We all do it. Oh, there must be a fingerprint on my lens. My screen must be dirty. We want the problem to be external because external problems are, they're easy to solve. You take a microfiber cloth, you wipe the glass, and the world becomes crisp again. Problem solved.
But Maria wipes the glasses. She puts them back on. She looks at the spreadsheet. And the text says, the wave stays.
And that is the moment. That is the moment the genre of the story shifts.
How's that?
It goes from a slice of life story about a busy accountant to a medical mystery. Because when you wipe the glass and the smudge doesn't move, you are forced to accept that the smudge is not on the spectacle. The smudge is in the eye.
The lens she can't wipe is her own cornea, or in this case, her retina.
Exactly. And this realization, I can tell you from experience, usually triggers a lot of anxiety in patients. Because you can't take your eye out and polish it. You're stuck with the dirty lens. The problem is part of you.
Now, before we get into the wet sponge mechanism of why this is happening, the source material highlights a really confusing, almost paradoxical aspect of this condition. It's what I'm calling the vision paradox.
This is one of the hardest things for friends and family of patients to understand. It creates a lot of confusion.
The text describes it like this, and it's so specific. She can see the clock on the wall, but she can't read the time.
And to an outsider, to someone who hasn't experienced this, that sounds like a contradiction.
It does.
Or worse, it sounds like she's making it up. If you can see the clock, surely you can see the hands on the clock.
Right. Stop being dramatic, Maria. Or just squint a little harder. But the source is adamant that this is a real physiological limitation. So how is that possible? How can you see the object, but not the detail on the object?
To understand that, we have to look at the architecture of the retina. We tend to think of the eye as a single camera sensor, like on your phone, where every pixel is the same quality.
Yeah, a uniform grid of sensors.
But it's not. It's not at all. The source text calls the macula the bullseye of the retina. And I want you to visualize an actual dartboard on the back of your eye.
Okay, I've got the dartboard in my mind's eye, so to speak.
So the huge area outside the bullseye, the black and white rings, the numbers, that represents your peripheral retina.
The vast majority of the surface area.
A huge area. It takes up most of the space. But visually speaking, it's low resolution.
Low risk. Okay.
It's grainy. It's designed for motion detection and for spatial awareness. If a car is coming at you from the side, your peripheral vision picks that up instantly so you don't get hit. But it can't read the license plate. It's not built for detail.
So in Maria's office, her peripheral vision is what tells her there is a round object on the wall over there. It sees the shape.
Exactly. She can navigate the room. She doesn't bump into the furniture. She can see her desk, her computer. Her wide-angle lens is working perfectly.
But reading the time, reading the numbers on the clock.
Reading requires the bullseye, the macula. That tiny centermost point of the dartboard is the only part of your eye that is capable of 20/20 high-definition vision.
The focal point.
It is packed, absolutely dense with photoreceptors cones that are designed to resolve fine detail, color, texture.
So when she tries to read the numbers on the clock, she is physically pointing that high-def bullseye at the clock.
She is trying to align her reading camera with the target. But in diabetic macular edema, the bullseye is the specific part of the eye that is broken. It is the epicenter of the damage.
So it's like having a smudge of Vaseline right in the dead center of your camera lens.
That's the perfect way to put it.
The edges of the photo are crisp. You can see the background, the furniture, everything. But the person's face in the middle is just a blur, a distortion.
Precisely. It's central distortions surrounded by peripheral clarity. And that is why she can see the clock, using her peripheral vision but not the time, which requires her central macular vision.
Okay, so we've established the where. The problem is in the macula, the bullseye. Now we have to talk about the what. And this is where we get back to our title, the wet sponge.
The mechanics of the failure, the plumbing problem.
The text explains the cause of this distortion with, a plumbing metaphor. It says, fluid from leaking vessels has pooled under the macula, causing it to swell.
Let's break that down because leaking vessels sounds dramatic, and it is. In a healthy eye, the blood vessels in the retina are like high-grade industrial pipes. They are sealed tight.
Watertight.
They have what we call the blood-retina barrier. It's a very selective membrane.
So nothing gets in or out unless it's supposed to.
Right. They deliver oxygen and nutrients. They take away waste. But the liquid part of the blood, the plasma, it stays inside the pipe. But Maria's diabetic. And the source implies that over a long period of time, high blood sugar has done significant damage.
I think this is a point of confusion for a lot of people. How does sugar damage a pipe? I usually think of sugar as, sticky, not destructive.
It's a great question. Think of excess glucose in the bloodstream as being sort of corrosive. Over years and years, it damages the delicate inner lining of these tiny blood vessels, the endothelium.
It weakens the walls.
It weakens the walls. It makes them brittle. It makes them porous. It's like rust slowly eating away at a pipe in your basement. You don't see it happening for a long time.
And eventually, after years of this slow degradation, the pipe springs a leak.
The seal fails. The barrier breaks down. And fluid serum, plasma, sometimes even fats or lipids, starts to seep out of the vessel and into the surrounding tissue.
And this is where the sponge comes in.
This is exactly where the sponge comes in. The retina isn't a hard, impermeable surface. It's a multi-layered, delicate neural tissue. It absorbs that leaking fluid just like a dry sponge on a counter absorbs a water spill.
And what happens to a sponge when it gets wet?
It gets heavier, it gets thicker, it expands. That is the literal definition of edema. It's just a fancy medical word for swelling caused by trapped excess fluid.
So if we could look inside Maria's eye with a high-powered microscope, the macula wouldn't look like a nice, thin, taut sheet anymore.
No, not at all. It would look boggy. It would be thickened. It would be, well, waterlogged.
Okay, I'm with you on the biology. Leaky pipes, wet sponge, swelling. I get that.
Yeah.
But here is the part where I always get stuck, and I think the source material does a truly genius job of explaining this. Why does swelling equal wavy lines?
Right. It's not intuitive. Why doesn't it just look blurry or dim? Why specifically the heat mirage, the distortion?
Exactly. If I look through a glass of water, things look distorted, sure.
Yeah.
But why does the grid line on a spreadsheet bend? To answer that, the deep dive introduces the core analogy of the entire text.
The hardwood flare.
The hardwood floor.
This is the part that really made it all click for me. It takes the biology and turns it into simple, intuitive geometry.
Let's walk through it. The text says, imagine a hardwood floor.
Okay, picture it. A beautiful living room, oak or maple planks. They are laid perfectly flat. They are fitted tight against each other. It's a smooth, level surface, a plane.
And then we have the accident, as the source calls it. You spill a big bucket of water on that floor.
And here is the key variable. You don't wipe it up. You just leave it.
It sits there overnight for a couple of days.
The water doesn't just sit on top. It seeps down into the wood grain. And just like the retina, the wood fibers absorb the fluid. They get saturated and they expand.
But the floor's locked in place. The boards are jammed right up next to each other. They're nailed to the subfloor. They can't expand sideways.
Exactly. So if you have 10 boards in a row and they all get wider, but there is no room for them to move left or right, there's only one direction they can go.
Up.
Up. The boards cup. The edges curl upward. The center of a board might dip, or the whole section might buckle and create a hump in the middle of your living room.
So the floor that was once a flat plane becomes a landscape. It has hills, it has valleys, it has ridges, it's uneven.
It is fundamentally no longer flat.
Okay, I can visualize the ruined floor. Now, how does the source map this back to the eye?
It's a direct one-to-one mapping. The text says, your retina is the floor.
That's such a powerful, simple image.
The spilled water is the leaking fluid from the diabetic vessels.
Okay.
And the warping and buckling of the wood is the swelling of your macula.
So the macula, the screen we project our reality onto, is physically buckling like a wet floorboard.
Yes. And now, apply this to the optics. Your eye is a projector. The lens at the front of your eye takes the image of the World Maria spreadsheet with its straight lines and shines it onto the back wall of the eye, onto the retina.
Like a movie projector in a theater.
Exactly. And if the movie screen in the theater is perfectly flat and taut, the image is perfect. A straight line in the movie looks like a straight line on the screen.
But if the screen is warped?
If the screen has a giant ripple in it because of, I don't know, water damage from a leaky roof,
then the image projected onto it will follow that ripple. It will curve with the screen.
the light has to drape over the physical bumps and dips of the swollen retina. So the straight line of the spreadsheet column physically looks curved to Maria because it is being displayed on a curved, uneven, buckled surface.
That is the aha moment right there.
Isn't it great?
The wave she sees isn't a hallucination. It's not in her brain. It's a topographical map of the swelling inside her eye.
She is literally seeing the shape of her own disease. The distortion is a direct representation of the physical damage.
That is wild. It explains everything. It explains the heat mirage effect. It explains why wiping her glasses didn't work. Because the warp isn't in the lens, it's in the projection screen itself.
It's a mechanical distortion, and that's why it's so disorienting. Your brain assumes the world is built on Euclidean geometry, straight lines, flat planes, right angles.
Right.
But your eye is suddenly feeding it non-Euclidean data. It's feeding it a funhouse mirror image, and the brain struggles to make sense of it.
And staying on this floor analogy for a moment, the source material implies a real sense of urgency here. It's not just about the floor being bumpy. It's about the floor being permanently ruined.
Right. Think about water damage in a house. If you spill a bucket of water and you wipe it up in 5 minutes, what happens?
Nothing really. The floor dries. It's fine. No big deal.
But if you let that water sit for a week or a month...
The wood rots.
Yeah.
It creates mold. The fibers start to separate and break down. It gets soft.
It becomes structurally unsound. Even if you manage to dry it out later, the wood itself is warped forever. You have to rip it out and replace it. The damage is permanent.
And this is the terrifying part of the biological parallel. You can't rip out a retina and replace it.
No, you get 2 retinas, and that's it. They are neural tissue. They are, for all intents and purposes, part of your brain. Once those photoreceptors, the rods and cones that do the actual seeing, once they die because they've been drowning in that toxic fluid for too long, they don't grow back.
So the wavy lines aren't just a quirky symptom. They are a distress signal, a fire alarm.
They are the check engine light flashing bright red on your dashboard. It means the floor is wet and the wood is starting to rot. Act now.
Which brings us to the pivot in the deep dive. The source material stops explaining the problem and starts telling us what to do about it. It moves from narrative and analogy to instruction.
It empowers the listener, which is so important.
It says, test yourself. And it offers a tool that I think is brilliant because it is so incredibly low-tech. It's called the door frame test.
It's essentially the Amsler grid for the real world. You don't need a doctor's chart or any special equipment. You just need a house.
I want to walk through this procedure step by step because the text is very specific, and there's one crucial nuance in there that I think is really easy to miss.
The isolation step? Absolutely.
Right. So, step 1, find a window frame or a door frame. Why a door frame specifically? Why not just look at a tree or a telephone pole?
Because nature is messy. Trees are curvy, clouds are fluffy. You need a reference standard. You need something in your environment that you know for a fact is a perfectly straight line.
An objective truth.
Yes, a carpenter built that doorframe with a level and a square. It is straight, so it's your control in the experiment.
So if the door frame looks bent, you know with certainty that the frame isn't the problem. The problem is the observer. Okay, so you're standing in front of a door. Step 2, and the source highlights this as the most important part. Close one eye.
This is the step everyone forgets or skips. People stand there with both eyes open and say, "Oh, looks fine to me," and they miss the early warning sign.
Why doesn't that work? I mean, I see the world with both eyes open. Shouldn't I test the system the way I use it?
No, because your brain is a very helpful and very clever liar.
A liar. How so?
Your brain practices what we call binocular summation, or more accurately in this case, suppression. If your left eye is sick and seeing a wavy door frame, but your right eye is healthy and seeing a perfectly straight door frame,
It gets two different signals.
it gets two conflicting data streams.
Mhm.
And the brain's primary job is to give you a single, stable, useful image of the world. So it says, that's conflicting data. The wavy one is probably an error. I'll just ignore that input and show the conscious mind the nice, straight image from the good eye.
So it literally photoshops the distortion out of your perception in real time.
It smooths over the glitch. It fills in the blind spots. You can walk around with significant vision loss in one eye and literally not notice it for years because your good eye is carrying the entire load and the brain is covering up the mess.
That is incredibly deceptive and dangerous.
It's an evolutionary survival mechanism that worked great on the savannah, but in the context of modern disease diagnosis, it's a trap. It hides the evidence.
So, to beat the trap, you have to close one eye. You have to force the brain to rely on a single, unfiltered feed.
Isolate the variable. Test each system independently.
Okay, so you're standing in the doorway. You've got your hand over your left eye. You're looking at the vertical edge of the frame with just your right eye. Step 3, what are we looking for?
You are looking for the heat mirage. Does that straight piece of wood look like it's bowing inward in the middle? Does it look like it's bowing out? Does it look like there's a kink in it? Does it look like someone took a bite out of the side of it or a piece is missing?
Any deviation from perfection, any wobble at all.
Any deviation from perfect Euclidean straightness is a positive test result.
And if you see the wave, if the door frame looks like it's buckling, what does the source text say is the next step?
It doesn't mince words here at all. It says, see a retina specialist immediately.
It doesn't say call your family doctor.
What?
It doesn't say bring it up at your physical next year. It says immediately.
No. And going back to our hardwood floor analogy, we know exactly why.
Because the wood is wet right now.
Every single day that fluid sits under the macula is a day of potential permanent damage to those photoreceptors. The wet sponge needs to be squeezed out. The floor needs to be dried.
And there are treatments for that.
Oh, absolutely. In modern medicine, we have amazing ways to do that. Injections that stop the leakage, lasers that can seal the vessels, but they only work if you catch it before the neurons die. They can stop the rot, but they can't bring dead wood back to life.
So speed is the single most important variable that determines the outcome.
Time is tissue. That's the mantra in ophthalmology. Time is retinal tissue.
It's really profound when you think about it. We started this deep dive talking about a simple kitchen sponge. Just a completely throwaway object. And we've ended up with a powerful, free, at-home diagnostic tool that could literally save your sight.
It connects the domestic to the clinical in a way that really sticks with you. It makes it accessible.
I think that's the power of these analogies that the source uses so well. The wet sponge explains the swelling. The hardwood floor explains the distortion. And the door frame gives you the power to check for it yourself.
It demystifies the disease. It turns it from this scary, vague, diabetic complication into a concrete, mechanical issue that can be understood and, more importantly, monitored.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with one final thought to mull over. We walk around every single day with such an incredible, unearned confidence in our senses. We think, I see it, therefore it is true.
Seeing is believing. It's the most basic rule we live by.
But this source material is a powerful reminder that vision isn't a direct window to the world. It's not a passive reception of reality. It's a projection. It's a movie being played on a biological screen inside our heads. And that screen is fragile.
It's biological. It's made of meat and fluid and leaky pipes. It can warp. It can fail.
It just reminds us that our entire perception of reality, the straightness of a line, the clarity of a loved one's face, is entirely dependent on the structural integrity of a tiny, wet piece of tissue, no bigger than a postage stamp at the back of our eye.
It's a very humbling realization. The canvas matters just as much as the light that falls on it.
So here's my challenge to you listening right now. It takes 5 seconds. Sometime today, when you walk through a door, whether it's leaving your office, entering your kitchen, or going into the bedroom, just pause for a moment.
Take the pirate step, as I like to call it.
I like that, the pirate step, exactly. Cover one eye, look
Yeah.
at the frame, then cover the other. Just double check that your floorboards are flat.
It's a tiny habit, a 5-second check-in. But as we've learned today, it's the only way to catch the wave before it crashes.
It's the best preventative maintenance you can do for your vision.
Absolutely.
Thank you for diving deep with us today into the wet sponge. It's changed the way I look at my kitchen sink, and it has definitely changed the way I look at door frames.
Me too.
Stay curious, stay observant, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.
Take